Chris, welcome here. Thanks very much for coming out today to talk to us. As you know, on this YouTube channel that we set up, it's called the Airspace Exchange. We're busy discussing different careers that people have followed in aviation with the aim of making that knowledge available to anyone wanting to get involved in aviation. Because it's not only about airline flying or whatever, there's many a different career that you can follow. And you've come through a number of different steps that are not the same as everyone else. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to share some of your experiences so that other people who are interested in getting involved in aviation would get some more insight into what's available. So welcome here. Thanks very much for your time. And we look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really going to be a pleasure. And I hope what I'm going to share is going to inspire or encourage someone else to continue with aviation.
Thank you very much. So, you know, there are lots of people, you bump into people all over the time, and regularly they say, I always wanted to fly, I always wanted to be a pilot. But each one of them has had a spark that's ignited that interest in flying, whether they did it or didn't do it. And I think we all have a different story, but what ignited that interest in your life to go flying?
The initial thing that made me to want to fly is I was a young boy, so we went to fetch my father from the airport. And when we stood by the windows, by the viewing deck, I saw different color of light. So I saw yellow light, blue light, green light, and I didn't understand the meaning of those lights. And that was my trigger to say, I want to find out what the colors mean.
And what sort of age would you have been when that happened?
I was about 9 years old, I must say, yes, about 9 years.
So from there, you then found out quite a lot about it, and you found out what the green and yellow and red lights meant. You found out more about the airplane that your father was on and coming in. And how did it go from that point where you started and got this interest to where you actually started flying?
So after that, I went to my parent and I said, I'm quite keen to get involved into aviation when I grow up. I think that's the one thing I want to do. And I couldn't come across anybody who could give me explanation of the different light, or anybody who had gone through what I wanted to do. The first thing was there's nobody in the family who does it. You're probably going to be the first. And I felt discouraged at that point. And I never pursued it until I finished off my matric. Then my interest just rekindled from there.
And where was this? Where were you at that stage of your life?
I was in Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Okay, that's very interesting. And now you followed that career for a good number of years. How many years have you been flying or as a pilot now?
I started my training in 1998 and I got my CPL in 2004. And
so you've been a commercial pilot for 20-odd years, 21 years.
21 years I've been a commercial pilot.
And what is your current position? What flying job do you have at the moment?
Currently, I'm flying as a land training captain for one of the airlines locally.
That's very interesting. So it's a big step from finding out about green and yellow lights when you did matric to where you are now. Won't you walk us through the process of when you did get interested? What was the first step that you took to get into the training, and where was the training? How was it done? Some indication of perhaps how you funded the training, because I believe it's not very cheap.
The training is not cheap. It's quite expensive. So I migrated to South Africa, and then I came across a fellow citizen that was doing pilot training. So I went to see him and try and find out exactly how is he doing it, because I initially thought you only had to go to do it via the military. He said, no, there was a flight school at Grand Central, and he was more than happy to take me with there. So we went there, I visited the school, and I did the intro flight. That's it. From there on, I never looked back.
It's interesting that intro flight, do people sometimes find that it's not what they want to do when they do the intro flight, when they have that first introduction to what flying might be?
Yes, exactly. For some people, intro flight could be a discouragement. For me, intro flight was what really triggered me and says, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And from there, I never looked back. And I started the training the very next day.
I believe from other conversations I've had that the flying medical is quite stringent and needs to be done. Would you do that before you or after you did that intro flight? Because you may well find out that you really took a liking to this flying and then you don't pass the medical. So which sequence would you do those, take those steps?
I would advise someone to start by, once you show interest, go and get medical first. And then at least you know you're medically fit to fly before you get yourself invested into the flying. Because as you said earlier, it's quite expensive. And it's unfortunate, it's not really funded by any institution. You cannot get a loan for it. So before you get to start flying, it's better to get your medical first. I would have done that if I knew then, but I'm glad everything worked out in the end.
You say that there's no funding for it. You can't get a student loan or through a bank or anything like that and pay it back? Or?
No, you cannot get a student loan for flying. And that's the most difficult part, because if you have to fund it, it's either family must fund it or you yourself must fund it through your own, through working and et cetera. But there's no funding, no loan that you can get for pilot training.
So you now done this intro flight, you did the medical, and you started flying the next day at Grand Central. What was the process? How long did it take you? What type of aeroplanes did you fly? What was the process that was followed until you qualified?
So my first aeroplane I started training on was a Cherokee 140. And then I flew that until I reached about 40 hours or so. And then I started flying Cessna 172s. Got a PPL. And after the PPL, I did night rating.
So PPL is a private pilot license?
Private pilot license, yes. And then after that, I did night rating so I could fly at night. And then from there on, I started studying for the theory exams, which takes quite some time. So I had to go attend lectures for them because English is not my first language. So then once I've passed all the exams, that's when I started focusing on hour building and getting instrument type rating, in order to finish off my CPL, my commercial pilot license, yes.
And that training that you were doing now, so it's a lot of hard work, a lot of studying, a lot of practice. Is it enjoyable or is it just hard work? It
is hard work, it's also enjoyable. It was quite enjoyable to discover new things, especially I developed quite a lot of interest into aerodynamics. I really enjoyed that. But it also hard works in certain areas. You need to really work hard to pass those exams, yes.
And Chris, so you then qualified, and how long did that take you? Around about a year somewhere from, it sounds like?
For the PPL, yes, the private pilot license, but it took me much longer to get my commercial pilot license because of lack of funding, and raising money was quite challenging at that time. So it took a bit longer, but I stayed the course. Eventually, I got my commercial pilot license a few years later.
I'm sure in some of the other chats, people will talk about how they raised that money, but just, what types of work you can do to help build up those hours. But for today, we'll just focus on that training. And from there, you moved from the training and now you're qualified. You had a shiny new license in your hands, yes. And you walked out and did you have a job straight off, or what happens from there?
So I was quite proud to have my shiny brand new blue book, and I thought from there on, that's it, I've made it now. And only realized that I had no hours to get a job anyway. And I was quite fortunate to be taken onto a program that one of the charter companies used to have. It used to be called Flatline. And I joined there as OC at Operational Control Center.
So you had a pilot's license, but you were doing a ground job at that stage?
Exactly, yes.
And is that the normal sort of route that people follow? Would they be involved in ground work so they get to know the overall program better, or was that unique with the way you followed it?
I think it was quite unique an opportunity, because to go from just being qualified and to work on at operations center for a period of time in order for you to go straight to fly a medium-sized aeroplane was quite a unique thing the company used to offer. And it offered quite a big opportunity in terms of learning what actually goes on behind the flying.
All the planning and
All the planning, yes.
all the peripherals that you might not get to understand when you're doing the flying alone.
Exactly, yes. So it gave us that opportunity. The job was it involved initially very simple task, like updating of the jet plate that we used to do, filing of fly plans, booking parking bays, simple stuff like that. And then gradually, as you get more experience, you start going into flight plannings and all that kind of work behind here.
So by the time you got into actually doing more of the flying, you had a good understanding of all the other bits and pieces that are required of you as a pilot.
Exactly. By the time you get to fly, you actually understand what goes on behind. And once you're starting closer to being given the opportunity to train on the aeroplane, you started doing jump seats on the aeroplane, so you could start observing the operations and starting familiarizing yourself with the SOPs, so that by the time you actually get to do training, you're actually ready with quite a lot of stuff you've done ahead here.
Sounds very interesting. So you then got onto the flying, and what were you flying in the beginning? What was the first flying job that you had? My
very first flying job, I was flying a Hawker Siddeley 748.
And what is that? It's a turboprop, is it?
Yeah, it's a turboprop. It was a 44-seater turboprop, more than 20 tons, and yeah, started flying that locally and then on contract in most African countries.
And that contract flying, do you leave from Johannesburg or your home base and go and do that trip, or do you go up there for a period of time and operate from a decentralized base?
So it would depend. At some time, you would fly from Johannesburg to certain place and come back a week later, or otherwise you would fly commercially there. The aeroplane would have already been there and will be stationed there for 6 to 7 weeks, where you're flying for the local operator. And once your tour is finished, you come back home for another 3 or 4 weeks there before you return again.
Chris, it sounds to me that there are pluses and minuses of that job, because if I look at that and I assume that as you newly qualified, it's exciting because you're flying in different environments, you're doing interesting flying, but you're spending quite long periods of time away from home and away from your family, especially if you have a wife and children, or if you have reasons that you need to be at home a lot. Did it work that way for you? And what did you enjoy about that? And what were the negatives about that type of work?
The one thing I enjoyed the most was going to new places, doing different type of flying, discovering new places. That was the one thing I enjoyed the most, and I still do until today. The difficult part was family life does take a bit of a strain by being away from home, especially if you go for quite a long period of time. Because you develop your own routine, they develop their own routine without you. And when you come back home, you must fit in their routine, because you're here for 3 weeks and then you're gonna go back again. So you cannot change their routine. You must just fit in and then you go back. So yeah, that was the negative part about contract flying.
Would you see that as a stepping stone to further, or would some people find that as a lifelong career? They'd be happy to do that contract flying where you go away for periods of time and back?
Yeah, for some people, they consider it as a stepping stone that would help you to gain the experience in order to go to join major airlines. For some people, they enjoy it so much they prefer to stay as a contract flying for the rest of their lives. My experience is I use it as a stepping stone to get me where I am today. And I gained as much experience as I could have doing that kind of flying.
So it's very much an individual process. And from my discussions with other people on the channel, it would appear that there's no silver bullet. There's no wonderful job that everyone always wants to do. Some people enjoy the contract flying, as you've just said, and it would appear that others would enjoy something more than that, possibly flying a helicopter or doing some airline work or any of those jobs, which I think you'll probably highlight shortly now. So you went from that contract job. What was the next step, and how did it latch on? How did you get from where you were to the next job that you did, and what was that job? What did that job entail? So
I stayed on that job for a while until That was in the first credit crunch, I think, with Freddie Mae in America closing down, and most of the flying from that company ended. And from there, I started working as a freelance. There wasn't many Oka Sidley 748 available. I flew for another operator flying cargo out of Cape Town. That also lasted about 2 years. That ended as well. Then I went to fly for Tropicana Airlines in Accra. We were flying drill bit for the oil industry. So we'll ferry them between usually Lagos and Accra and Jamina and Douala for a period of time.
Are they quite big, those drill bits? Or
They're quite big. Can be small, quite very heavy. So your floor loading becomes quite challenging on how you load the specialized drill bits into an aeroplane. Was the biggest challenge. You could spend hours and hours on just how to load it, and then only fly 45 minutes to get, and then spend hours offloading it. Yeah, that was quite interesting. Yeah.
So all that experience you got in the beginning about load plans and flight plans, that came into good use there, understanding how to do load sheets, etc.
Yeah, that became in quite handy, because then you start relying more on what you have learned previously in order to get the job done. Yeah.
So the previous job wasn't just a stepping stone; it was a building up of experience and knowledge at every step that you've taken there.
Yes, and some of the knowledge are still very much relevant to today. Some of the knowledge I learned today, I still use them today.
Fantastic. So from there, you then moved to the next position.
Yes, from there, I went to fly Embraer 120, did a top rating in Brazil, and then I started flying Embraer 120 from Lanseria. I was a freelance, so it was not a stable job, and I wanted something more stable, more permanent. With that, I started flying for a company in the Republic of Chad as a first officer on a Brasilia there.
Can you tell us a little bit about the job in Chad?
Initially, the company had only one aeroplane when I joined, and we would fly maybe once a week. And slowly the company evolved, and it grew. We ended up having a contract for oil and gas, petroleum, and we started flying to the inland rigs once or twice a day, and that became quite busy. We do charters and government work as well in the whole area of Central Africa. Yeah.
So Chad is not a country that many people would go to as a tourist. Was it interesting being in a place that's not on the normal tourist beat that most people don't go and see?
It was very interesting. I've seen some very interesting places there. Yeah, it's very different to everything I know. It was quite a culture shock for me as well on certain things, how things were being done there. Yeah.
And that was living in the desert, or were you at small camps or in towns? Where were you based?
We were based in Jamina, and would fly from Jamina to usually mostly to the south, and spend the day either at a rest hotel or in the camp or in the sugarcane factory. They had a restroom there, and then later during the day you bring back the same passengers you went with in the morning, or different passengers. Yeah.
What were the upside and downside of that job? What did you enjoy about it, and what were the things you could do without having to do again?
The upside of the job, it was a permanent job, so I never needed to worry about looking for another job or being a freelance, having to look for work all the time. The downside is the rotations were very long, and would spend typically 2 months on and sometimes only 3 weeks off. That was the downside of it, yes.
I assume that would be more acceptable to the younger people than the older people who have families. Younger, when you don't have children, was it easier to manage that as a career?
It was not easier because I had young kids. So being away for such a long period of time was one of the sacrifices that we're all enduring, but provided that one day things get better.
So Chris, from there you moved on to what was the next job, and how did you get into that one?
And from there I came across a a friend of mine I knew from a previous job. And then I applied to the local airline, and then I was called in for the interview. And did the interview. I went through the psychometrics. And day after that, it was completely quiet. So I never heard from them again. And I sent them an email to say I wanted to know if there was any progress. And they said, no, actually, they have got a start date for me. And yeah, that was quite a relief. And I got a job in an airline, yeah.
And that's a current job that you're in now?
That's a current job I'm still at, yeah.
Did you start off as a co-pilot, or do you come in as a captain based on your previous experience?
No, I came in as a co-pilot.
And you worked your way up through that company as well? Yes,
I worked my way through this company as well, yeah.
So comparing that job to the previous ones, this is obviously an airline type job, so you say it would be more routine and more regular, and you'd be based at home.
Yes, but it was also contract work. So, but you are now doing contract work on a much bigger aeroplane. It is different from doing contract work on a turboprops, where you are your own operational control. You do everything yourself. You do your own loading, to having a bit much more structure behind you when you go to fly. You've got that backup. That was the biggest difference here.
And the aeroplane you're flying now is?
The aeroplane I'm currently flying is the Airbus A320.
Which is a wonderful aeroplane, I believe. You enjoy flying there.
Amazing, yeah. Love it, yeah.
Good. So, Chris, just to wrap the whole thing up, a message I'd like to get out there to people interested in getting into aviation is, what have you enjoyed about it? What haven't you enjoyed about it? And coupled to the things that you mentioned, which were difficult with having a family, is it feasible to have a family with young children and have an aviation career? So just what do you like, what don't you like, and what you don't like, if you highlight a little bit about the family issues that go with it.
What I like the most is the ability to travel to different places, discovering new cultures, new ways of doing things, coming across people from all over the world.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but that's not only when you're doing charter and airlines, all the flying gives you that exposure. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Okay. So that's the one thing that I enjoy the most. And the one thing is I get to live my passion. So it's not.
And your passion is flying airplanes.
It's flying airplanes, yes. I get to live my passion. So it's not so much as work for me, because I get to live my passion. On the negative side is if you have got a young family and being away, it puts strain on the family. But it is possible if you do put up structure and manage it correctly. Then
so it's all about how you manage the constraints that you have to work with.
Exactly. It's about how you're going to manage that, yes.
And Chris, as a final wrap then to this whole chat, there are going to be other guests talking about their careers and how it's worked out. What question would you like them to answer? What would be the question you would ask them if you were hosting the podcast?
If you had something, would you have done something differently in order to get you where you are now? And what is that?
Chris, I found that very interesting indeed. It's not the route that I've come through in flying, so it's been quite educational for me to find out different ways of getting into the process. Thank you very much indeed for your help and for your info today. I hope you're going to have many, many more years of happy flying on whatever airplane, whichever company it is. And I hope your children will grow up not to give you the headaches that they gave you with your time constraints early on in the process.
Exactly. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Yeah, I hope this experience can be shared with many more people.